Welcome to Empowered Returns, a show that surfaces forward-thinking real estate advice that investors and developers need to help them invest smarter and build better. All right, welcome to Empowered Returns. I'm excited to have Chris Arnold and Bryant Hughes from Authentic. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you guys in the Charles Gate headquarters and Charles Gate's podcast studio.
That's right.
And I'm going to dive in with the most important question to start right here, which is, Chris tells me the magic sauce of the partnership, Bryant, is your experience at Clown College. So.
Yeah, I'm a semi-professional juggler on the side. Also have some unicycle talents and was an amateur magician.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. Unicycle too. That was not part of the pre-prep call. So
now
I know. Added talents.
It's kind of all of the talents, yeah.
Right? Anything else we need to learn about you before we dive in?
No, I should probably also say that was all a lie. So I don't want that out publicly.
I've seen it on video, so you can't actually say that because it's out there somewhere.
Yeah, it's a half
on
truth.
Social media.
It's a half truth.
I'm gonna send you some fire sticks in the mail and just have you kind of do a
Torches.
YouTube video for us. Yeah, exactly. Awesome.
That works.
Awesome.
Nice.
Good. Well, actually, maybe we can just dive in and talk about Authentic a little bit and just your background, how you guys came together to form the company and sort of what your specialties and expertise is at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all sort of a love story on Twitter. I think Bryant tells the story the best, but Bryant was in Colorado for college. I came to Colorado after college, and then shortly thereafter we started our own companies, and we needed help on the design and development side of the agency world, and we were sort of one another's yin and yangs, and we met over Twitter. We were in the same circles, and then we started working together. So that was a little more than 10 years ago, and we formed Authentic. I believe it was in early 2013, and so now here we are.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious who slid into each other's DMs first.
Yeah. Right. I can't remember.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Well, I was going out to Denver for just some networking. Mm-hmm. I had moved to Chicago from Denver. Was going back to Denver to kind of just rekindle some old flames, and yeah,
it was a trains passing in the night, I guess, a little bit, because he had just left to go to Chicago. And we were just kind of, like I said, in the same circles. And then maybe he was literally just replying to some of the same threads on Twitter, 10 years ago, 11 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then, the magic started. Well, I don't want to overuse the magic. The magic
literally and figuratively.
But yeah, we just started connecting. Really liked what he was all about and kind of what he stood for, and the background he had in computer science. It just was a really good fit for what we were both doing.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, and now it's been 10 years, and a lot of exciting work you guys have done. The first few years, I know when we talked about it, we're kind of a wide range of industry experience, but in the past, handful of years, you guys have really, dove deep into the multifamily space. How did that come about? And, I guess what have you learned as far as multifamily branding is different from sort of any other industry or corporate branding?
Yeah, so we initially were working across industries, everything from small pizza chains in Chicago to Fortune 500 companies, and really had a wide experience building a variety of different kind of online tools, digital tools, corporate websites, apps, e-commerce platforms, so on and so forth. And then, at the time, as just kind of a function of needing to figure out a better sales process, we looked at some of our clients, and we were working with some real estate developers, some architects, some urban designers, and then some cities and municipalities. And we kind of dove in there, and that was our first kind of launch into the urban space, as we called it at the time. Really seeing how design and technology can add value to some of those problems. And then pretty quickly we saw, multifamily, real estate, development, lease-up marketing, and saw a big opportunity to kind of take the skills that we had as these designers and technologists, but build tools, build processes, brands that can really innovate the way that, properties are marketed and leased up.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you guys started to notice as you were looking into multifamily how bad the status quo is in a lot of areas, and how boring and just same old for property branding and marketing has been for so long. Is that kind of what drove you to the opportunity?
I think so. I mean, we had the opportunity to work with some really forward-thinking developers in the early years of that transition, and we saw what it could be. And I think we also saw at the same time sort of what it was, what that status quo kind of average feeling was across the industry. And so I think that sparked a lot of that sort of internal dialogue around there can be this can be done a lot better across the industry, and how can we play a role in that?
Yeah, no, that's I think that's absolutely true. And I think what is so cool about seeing you guys work and working with you, and everything that we're doing, continue to do together, is like you guys take just a different and unique approach to thinking about brand. I think you're really focused on the sort of resident journey, the resident experience, which is ultimately building that branding and marketing experience for the benefit of the residents, but ultimately drives developer and client results. So
Right.
you want to dive into that a little bit, talk about your kind of thought process, philosophy?
Yeah, I can kick us off there. It's taken us a little while to get to this point because you have to understand and learn the industry first, and we spent a long time doing that in previous years, but really having the mindset that the renter comes first, and how can we kind of put ourselves in their shoes? What are they going to see first? What are they going to see second, third, fourth, fifth? And how can we impact that journey for them? And then from a brand experience perspective, how can we make sure that they feel connected, kind of sought after and wanted in that journey, so that when they finally land in an apartment, they feel like they've been taken care of from point A to point B. And I think that also tends to get lost a little bit in early development conversations around this is actually really a business asset at the end of the day for the development partner. And Bryant, I know you have some really good thoughts around that, so I'll kick it to you. But that's actually been something that we've been discovering over the last few years of our work too. Is it's one thing to talk about brand and executing really well creatively, but I think where the power is unlocked is when we work with partners that understand that this is also a business asset. It goes well beyond just doing really good work.
Yeah. So going to your customer or leasing experience and resident experience, I mean, before a lease is signed, they say that a potential resident will engage with your brand 12 times on average before a lease is signed. And so from our perspective, we want every one of those touch points to be very elevated and very on brand. So in the same way that a developer is pushing an architect to create a very seamless on-site experience for a resident, obviously, we want that same experience to be brought before they even step foot on site, through to create a very seamless leasing process, so that when they do step foot on site, they already have, they already can feel the vibe of the project. They understand the brand. They understand why they want to live there and what the experience is going to be like when they do live there. And that itself becomes the asset for the developer. It builds their brand reputation, and then that brand reputation increases demand in the market, helps them stabilize faster. So there's certainly a mechanics to the creative strategy of it all that does impact the bottom line of the project.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's the big thing that gets missed oftentimes. There's this idea out there that is, I think, predominant that you're going to build a brand and just create a overall thing that you have to do, because it's like we have sort of a little bit of a brand, but we don't want to spend a lot of money because it's just a cost. It's really not something that's going to be any value. I have to do it. 123mainstreet.com. We have a website, whatever. And so, but I think what we try to advise clients is exactly what you're saying there. And like, hey, a good, well-designed, quality brand that increases the reputation in the market can drive business results. So both, like, for example, an aspect of you have this sort of branded asset in perpetuity, but it also drives and increases the idea that residents are attracted to this property and drives rents. So faster absorption, higher rents, better quality residents are all things that impact the bottom line of the property, and that there can be a good solid return on investment for this marketing.
Right. And I don't think that people have traditionally thought of the branding work as having the ability to do that. They think of it as kind of an expense that you just have to pay when you're going to lease up the property, and there's really not a lot of thought, there's not a lot of investment put into it. And it's exactly that. It should be an investment. It should be something that does increase the long-term value of the project, and that's the way that we really think about it.
Yeah, and where do you guys draw insights from in terms of the residents in a market that you're trying to attract? One of the things I always say is, like, it's so important to be close to the customer, or like knowing and understand what residents want and need, and so how do you guys think about getting that information or determining who might be the target audience for a specific project when you're designing a brand and designing a marketing program for a project?
Mm-hmm.
There's a few different ways. I mean, we have a pretty robust kickoff plan or platform that we run our partners through, and we certainly get a lot of insight from the development team themselves, people that work for them. Oftentimes they have had projects in the city or the neighborhood that we're going into. So that's a big component of it. I think another aspect is just the research and the due diligence phase that comes after getting that initial insight from the partner. We do a pretty deep dive into that, as well as competitive analysis. What's the rest of the landscape look like? Kind of what are we up against? Where can we improve and really make sure that this property stands out? It's a challenge in markets that we're not super familiar with, but I think that we really pride ourselves on kind of putting our thinking caps on and getting down to those answers, even if we're not intimately familiar with a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's positioning at the end of the day. Looking at the competitive landscape, looking at demographics of the area, looking at the neighborhood. What are the different interesting landmarks, restaurants, destinations of the neighborhood itself, of the city itself, of the region of the country. So there's a lot of thought put into the actual concept and the identity that's created. That takes effort, that takes diligence to kind of come up with, and you need a good process to figure that out. Mm-hmm. Again, it's not something that you can just kind of go on 99 Designs and hire someone and get like really. You can certainly do that. I don't know how quality it's going to be, but if you do make the investment and you do deliver an identity and a brand experience that is super elevated, it'll provide some of the results that we've been talking about.
And that's where the magic happens, right? Like you do the research, you understand a neighborhood, you understand the history mm-hmm. of a place, and you end up at a name, at a brand, and with an experience that actually makes sense in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
If you go to 99 Designs or wherever you 123 Main Street, as you said, it's just a name on a building, and then that building's just going to be a building like every other building, very average. And where we really like to push our partners is you can be far superior to average. Think about it this way.
Yeah, I always like to think about differentiation is what kind of creates this extra special appeal. So you can be like just a building or a project in the context of a market and achieve sort of market rents, market absorption. Mm-hmm. Sort of by default, as long as you don't really screw anything up.
Right.
But where you can drive a difference is by really creating a unique, differentiated, well-positioned brand.
Right.
And brand experience and resident experience. And then also the demand side of it, which we'll get into too, but the marketing and digital marketing demand side of that as well, that can drive and achieve market beating results. So higher rents, higher faster absorption, and all those things that actually drive bottom line value.
Right.
But I think the key thing that, at least from us working together and talking about this a lot, is the idea that it's not just about like a pretty picture and a logo and some colorways. It's about like a strategy, right? And I think that stems very much from positioning, as you mentioned earlier. Like, who is this for? Why? What value does it deliver, and how is it unique in the market? And I think stemming from that point of view, and if you can, again, the other thing we advise clients and partners with often is like, let's get started early on this, because like starting to build that during the design and architecture phase, you can really create this like whole holistic experience that kind of just reinforces each other and makes it even more powerful to out-achieve the market, essentially.
Right.
Is that the kind of way you guys think about it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think nowadays on a new build, property marketing, property lease up, you need a group of specialists that are all involved in different areas of the project. You need a brand specialist. You need someone who knows how to create the website, create a great digital experience that transitions right into the leasing experience itself, where the majority of the leads are generated. It's a very specialized process with a lot of moving pieces, and that's essentially the thesis for like Authentic, is we have all of those specializations in-house and have one kind of comprehensive approach to kind of take a project from the early brand and identity work all the way through, on-site collateral and pre-leasing, and then have all the digital tools that are needed on a modern project to generate the leads that come in, that powers and empowers the leasing team. There's a lot of different pieces to that puzzle, but a comprehensive and integrated approach is really where all the value comes from.
Awesome, and I appreciate you plugging the empowered word.
Exactly.
Very well done. Work.
Drop that in.
Drop it right in. I like it. I like it. Awesome. Best ever. Right.
Yeah.
Just right. Not even prompted.
No.
Very authentic of you.
Yeah. Drop those in.
This has been a magical conversation.
It has already. I would say too, just to add to that, like to go right to your point, that's kind of been a hot take we've had from the very beginning, and that is to say, leasing should not begin pre-leasing should not begin 2 months before a building opens. And, I think there is a status quo around that too in the industry where it's like, we're getting to the point where we're about to open. Okay, time to start getting our leases signed. We take the approach of as far out as possible. Let's nurture your renters. And that could be 6 months, it could be 8 months, it could be a year out. And we've seen some pretty dramatic results when it comes to the time to actually sign those leases and who's in line and who's not, depending on how the pre-leasing approach has been on a project.
Yeah. That's something that we 100% wholeheartedly agree on. And we've had, an amazing level of success that is very clear and apparent when we get started earlier on projects. To start the sort of the branding, demand gen, lead nurturing, resident nurturing early on. And we found, incredible success pre-leasing, a large percentage of the units even before the building opens.
Right.
And I mean, that is just immediate cash flow for a property that makes a substantial impact, certainly in year one financials, but ongoing as well. It drives cash flows. It drives, ultimate property value. It helps, that momentum begets more momentum and keeps the building filled and occupied and creates a real buzz around it. So all these things really, really just work very well.
Right.
What have you guys, when you're talking to a new sort of partner or client or prospect, what's the take on that from a developer standpoint? What feedback do you get, like as far as hesitation to getting started early, or most of them kind of buying in now the way you were talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, the main hesitation is just that like people aren't in the market searching for apartments, 6 months early, which isn't wrong. But that doesn't mean that you can't be building awareness of the project, which is kind of like the first step towards creating demand. And so we're always advocating for getting on-site signage as soon as construction starts, just so that you can both start building awareness and then also launching the project splash page, again, as kind of an awareness building tool, but then also to control the narrative of like your project. There's going to be tons of articles that are written up. There's going to be a lot of kind of people having things to say, but, being able to control that narrative online where, the primary people are going to learn the most about your project is super important.
Yeah.
And another, significant pushback has always been, do we need to hire somebody full-time to do this for the next 6 months or 12 months? And I think the answer is no. It can be done in a kind of lean and mean way so that you're maybe touching it a couple times a month and kind of keeping it humming along and working with a creative partner like Authentic, for example. It's not a lot of added overhead to a project cost. Certainly it's not a full-time leasing, consultant on staff. And so it can be done in a way that's really thoughtful, but not, killing any budget.
Well, I think it's zero added cost, to be direct about it. Like when we're doing pre-leasing campaigns, we're not doing paid ad spend during pre-leasing the majority of the time. We're getting some signage on site. We're doing some, early organic marketing. We're getting some email templates going up, website splash page, but those are all things that we would be doing anyways. We're just starting it earlier and we're seeing the value that is generated from those assets come to the project earlier. So it's really just a matter of getting started earlier to see the value earlier. And it's hard to really say why we should wait on some of those things if there is no cost difference.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the perception though is that like this is going to cost me more, or do I have to hire a leasing person to start? And we look at it the same way. There's the pre-leasing phase. It's not necessarily active leasing. You're not having to do appointments or have a leasing person or all that stuff, but you're starting to do that demand generation and nurturing side of it that can help build awareness, build demand, build, all of this momentum going into the start of actual leasing. And when you're actually signing leases, doing tours, whether it's virtual or otherwise in a model or offsite gallery or whatever it is.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. It's definitely not a lot of added cost at all. In most cases, it might even be zero. So it absolutely makes a whole lot of sense to start early.
Right.
I think the other objection, I don't know which one of you guys just mentioned it, but like, oh, people aren't renting that early. And it's like, of course they're not. But this is there's a difference between marketing and leasing and how those things actually work to just, again, create that, awareness in the market to drive through. And again, to build. Maybe someone who sees, a post or is on the email list, is interested in the neighborhood, what's happening.
Right.
Because, hey, maybe they're going to refer a friend to this building when they're ready to lease, for example.
Right.
Or they're going to also lease up, come around next time when their lease is up and they're thinking early, whatever the case might be. It just makes so much sense.
Right.
That's totally right. That's on point. And I'm thinking back to an announcement I saw on LinkedIn sometime in 2022. It was a marketing coordinator or director for a property, and it was a beautiful property. She was really proud of it. And they had just put up signage leasing signage at the property, but the building was complete and it was ready to be leased like that day. Right. And so she was announcing, really excited, we're now leasing. We just put the signage up. And I'm thinking to myself, if that signage had been up for the last year while that building was under construction and people walked by it every single day, because this wasn't in the middle of nowhere, you probably would have 300 people that want to have a conversation today.
Right.
But now you're starting at zero and it needs to be leased next month.
Yeah.
And it just never made sense to me.
No, it makes no sense at all. That's what we've always done when we've started doing a kind of go-to-market campaign, planning for projects, everything from working with agency like you guys to start to do the creative and the marketing side of it, and then the planning to like be pre-leasing this thing. Like you don't wait till a building's open. That's that's such a waste of money.
Right.
If the debate is between like spending marketing dollars early or waiting, like the amount of money most people are investing, that's the cost for marketing and creative, is way less expensive than a zero on your rent roll for a few months. You know what I mean? After a building opens, or low dollars. I mean, it just it's in so many cases, like investing properly in marketing. Again, we're going to assume you guys do a fantastic job and assume that we can spend and invest in marketing that actually matters and makes a difference and is effective and not just boring and status quo. But effective marketing is an ultimate tool to provide a solid return on investment. I mean, even just if you think about it, where you've got just a status quo, start leasing, a month ahead instead of 4 months ahead, and you have sort of boring branding and nothing that actually drives impactful kind of appeal to an audience that is going to rent this building. If your lease up lasts 3 more months than it would with a bigger investment, and your rent roll is $150,000, let's just say, that that $100,000 extra investment in marketing pays for itself 3.5 times over, 4 times over. And it's just sort of it's sometimes hard because the status quo in this industry is just so forgetful that you're not just building a building to build it, but you're building it to lease it up, right? And so ultimately, the investment in marketing that's going to drive faster rents, higher rents is just such an immediate payback, an immediate return on investment, that it's sometimes hard for me to sort of understand why it's so hard for some developers to kind of see. Now, I'm not saying every developer. There's a lot of forward-thinking developers and smart people and clients and partners that we work with, and probably you guys work with, that get it. And that's why they're seeing, superior market returns, empowered returns, as we like to call it here. But I think that's the key part, that as more and more people start to realize how important this stuff can be, and why I'm excited to be working with you guys on a lot of projects, because I think we're going to continue to drive amazing results, and that financial results, better resident experience, all these things across the board that sort of just drive long-term asset value of the properties and create an amazing returns for developers, their investors, and their just a better place to live for residents too. So,
and I think there needs to be proof shown, right? Like there needs to be, if it hasn't been done this way before, well, show me that it can work. And the more projects that we are able to roll out where we see results with 200 or 300 pre-leasing leads ready to go, we can then share that back with the industry and say, look, here's the proof. These are the data points that we have for this type of approach. It works. Here's why we think it works. This is our hypothesis. And we see it playing out in real time. And this is kind of what you could expect, hopefully, right? Ideally, on your project too.
Yeah, totally, without a doubt. And maybe that's kind of a little bit of a segue to also talk about, not just, obviously we've led in with a lot of the creative strategy, the positioning and things, but how do you guys then think about taking that creative, creating a playbook and a sort of digital strategy, whether it's websites and organic social, organic SEO, or digital email, all that stuff? How do you think about kind of building campaigns from the positioning and strategy standpoint to kind of actually generate real demand?
Yeah, in our branding process, like we have several different deliverables. One of the last deliverable after we've gone through the brand and identity design, we've created the brand guidelines and the logo marks and the word marks and really the way that the brand is going to come to life. We offer a brand playbook, and so that is basically going through those 12 different touch points that I mentioned kind of earlier in our conversation that a potential resident would go through, and activating those 12 touch points with the brand itself. So, there's so many different pieces of collateral that both print and digital that we need to really account for in the entire leasing journey. And so that's what the brand playbook is. It's being very intentional about the ways that the creative is activated into each of those touch points, which then, creates that overall leasing experience. And then, kind of to our background and what we were talking about before, we come from a place of being a web design and technology company. Chris's background is in graphic design, 3D animation. Mine was in software engineering and website development. So we've always brought this very digital focused slant to the work that we do. And that kind of shows up in, our ability to run these digital campaigns that do generate leads. And we have a property marketing platform called Amplify that, we think delivers the best user experiences and digital leasing experiences in the industry. So that's definitely a big part of, the authentic playbook with how we market and lease projects.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to talk a little bit more about Amplify, which is your proprietary sort of website management system, content management system that you guys build all your custom websites on, and specifically you've designed it for multifamily, right? And it's a I'll let you guys talk about the sort of benefits of it and what it does and why you've designed that to deliver more effective leasing, branding, and marketing experience.
Yeah, going back to some of the earlier conversations we had during the transition into real estate or multifamily at the time. Again, we were calling it the urban space because we didn't really know what we were totally getting into at the time. But one of the big things we learned was there needed to be something in between the Squarespace and the fully custom website, because the gap in price was just massive. That chasm was something that wasn't really being filled very effectively. And so with Amplify, we thought about it through a componentized system, essentially. So we ultimately designed 40 or 50 design components that can then be edited, adjusted, and sort of made quote unquote custom to each of these properties on their property website. So every time we roll it out, we're using some of the same ingredients, but all the ingredients are being mixed a little bit differently every time. So it really ultimately allows us to put out sites that feel very custom, they're very unique. And we have, with our background, we have a very UX and UI forward mindset in terms of how they should function and really perform from a renter perspective, and hopefully drive leases a little bit more quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's this idea of like widgets in the prop tech world and how like all the latest widgets are going to lease up your website. And I think that's true on a lot of like property marketing platforms where there's kind of a lot of bells and whistles, but at the end of the day, the ultimate user experience that's created on the website is still not great. And that's because there's just not enough detail put into the design aspect of some of those platforms. And so with Amplify, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel to create kind of like a bunch of widgets. We're really just trying to offer the most high-end elevated design experience and leasing experience that we can through the tool.
Yeah, I think that's a great little sort of double click point there to talk about this idea. I often say like, tactics in search of a strategy or widgets in search of a strategy, and like, put a pop-up box on the website, promote the $100 off this month, or put a contact form, put a video, put a pop-up thing, put a slide in update. It's like, oh Jesus Christ! Next thing you know, it's a full circus act. Speaking of circus,
yeah.
And it just looks terrible. It feels terrible. It actually leads to worse results because it just adds so much friction in so many cases. And so I think what you guys have really done in a unique way is put that user experience, prospect experience first, which leads to an overall better feeling, less friction, more likelihood to actually convert into a lead or appointment, and then more likely to continue to build that through the whole leasing process to convert to an actual lease and a happy resident. And so that's cool. But at the same time, you have these tools and all the user interface stuff that you need to make it work, but just not a cluttering of mess of kind of a check a box, not to knock other vendors out there, but it's like, this is like idea of like click a box for like what you want XYZ in your website instead of having a agency like yourself, studio like yourselves, actually building something around a strategy.
Right.
Yeah. It's not to say that, and you're not saying that all widgets are bad, and we're not saying all widgets are bad because we have widgets that are a part of Amplify as well. But I think, when you see a banner, an overlay, a corner widget, a chat widget, a sidebar tag to chat, and you start to get 5, 6, 7 things on a page, and then you try to pull it up on your mobile phone and you realize I have to click away from 3, 4, 5 things to even get to what's the headline of where I am on this website. That's obviously a huge user experience problem. And you see that really industry wide. And it's not to blame one person in particular or one group in particular, but the stance that we take is, yeah, we have those tools if we need them. Maybe let's deploy one or two of them, depending on what the goals of the property are or the stage of the lease up. But we don't need to go through and check the box on all of them and get it to a point where you can really barely use the website.
Yeah. And we've seen that in some of the data. We'll take over projects that aren't built on Amplify's or that are just, use maybe poor design conventions, and the time that users are spending on the site is very low versus if you have a simple, just straightforward user experience, they're just going to be spending more time on the site, and that's ultimately what you want to drive conversions.
I think especially it's a great point to talk about sort of mobile, right? Because most of the web visits are mobile these days.
Right.
And so you've got to make sure that, and everyone's kind of, I think often has fallen trap. I viewed it on my computer. We're in a meeting. Let's view this website on the computer and it needs a pop-up or whatever widget. It's like, well, have you looked at it on mobile to make sure that this is the right thing? 'Cause it's first and foremost, people are visiting on mobile.
Right.
So
Right.
I know you guys really take that seriously and build that into your infrastructure.
I would say like industry-wide, mobile is, it's obviously the majority these days. I think just to earmark and say, look at your data and just confirm that, as you're rolling out sites or as you're going back and reviewing data from websites that are already existing. But yeah, absolutely. Like I said, going back to my previous example, pull it up on your mobile phone. And if you're spending 30 seconds trying to click things away, then there's a problem there. And you really need to think about the user experience with someone just on the go on a lunch break or whatever, trying to get information fast.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. Where do you guys drive your inspiration from? And, where you like to talk, I know, and I agree that you guys are forward thinking and trying to iterate design and iterate marketing. Where do you get your inspiration to do that?
Yeah, for me, I like to tap into what's being said in the industry. What are other creative minds and thought leaders thinking about, looking at? Where are they visiting? Where are they traveling to? We talk a lot about hospitality and how we can pull a lot from hospitality over into multifamily and sort of use that to inform development partnerships. I think that's really important, especially from a brand experience perspective. There are a lot of really good examples in hospitality of feeling welcomed from the initial email that you get after making a reservation, for example, and that extends through check-in, through your day-to-day at a stay, in your hotel room, let's say, and so forth. I think that's really important, just to have a pulse on all of that and then think about how you could apply that into multifamily.
Definitely. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I feel the same way. It's like looking outside the industry, especially hospitality. I agree totally. There's so much to be learned from that part of the industry, but also just like, what are some of the really interesting and unique forward thinking large corporations doing? Right. And what are some other industries? It might even be, some SaaS platform. How are they talking to customers? There might be just some inspiration out of this that you can say, okay, how are we going to communicate and build this resident experience from the ground up, essentially, such that it can, create a remarkable place for them to appeal to them to live in and then actually move in and live in. And I think by doing that, the brand creative and being able to convey that through the whole experience is just really a powerful opportunity to create happier residents and better places to live, which is really the big magic sauce that I think we're all sort of striving for.
Yep.
Do you want to dive into maybe just your process? Let's say a new prospect comes and talks to you. How do you like to get started, and how do you think about beginning your process with a developer who comes to you and say, hey, we have a new project in the works, and how do you get started?
Yeah, quick intro call just to get the high level information of a project, the unit mix, the location, the demographics of the area, understanding kind of the architecture of the project, are there any mixed use attributes of it? Kind of just getting all the high level details, which allows us to kind of dig in and really start to put together like an initial strategy. Once the project starts, we usually walk them through kind of like a 3-phased approach. It starts with the design phase where we're really coming up with a brand identity, designing, all of the brand guidelines. That culminates with what I was talking about before about the brand playbook that shows the 12 different touch points and all the ways that the brand is activated through the entire leasing journey. Then after that, in phase 2, we're really focusing on pre-leasing. So that's taking some of those brand activations from the playbook and then starting to activate them on site during construction to drive pre-leasing leads to the splash page website, build early local awareness and demand. and then starting to do some early nurturing campaigns to kind of stay in touch, continue to nurture people who have expressed interest in the project. And then finally in kind of phase 3, it's the lease up marketing, the demand generation of taking a lot of that early local awareness, that early demand that we've built, and really scaling it with all of kind of the digital tools, Amplify being one of them, in addition to kind of the digital marketing, pay-per-click, organic marketing that we would be doing to really scale that demand.
Awesome. Is there anything that, you've got learnings over the past few years working with clients? Like what makes a most effective client-to-client relationship, like to create that partnership? Is there something that you would like want developers or clients to know coming in that's like how to best work with us? Or what's some of the maybe the mistakes that are made, or, just early kind of thinking is if you had every client in the future that, what should they know coming into the process?
I go right to just having an open mind. I think one of the things that I try to sort of put myself in their shoes with is, more or less with the type of client that we work with, they've done a few lease ups over the years, but they're not doing 10 lease ups or 20 lease ups a year, and we are. And I think that, being able to come in with an open mind and kind of hear recommendations, hear it out, vet everything out, sure, maybe push back on a few things, and we can have some conversations around how to best approach it for that particular property. But really coming in and being willing to view a partner like us as an expert, because we are doing 20, 30, 40 lease ups a year. We kind of understand best practices, and we also understand, what we should probably be staying away from.
I agree with that totally. And that's the same thing that we talk to clients about as well. Development is a team sport, right? And you want to bring in experts from all these fields, whether it's architecture, construction, branding, marketing, leasing, property management. And so the faster you can assemble that team of like high quality professionals, trust, the work being done, set out, obviously developers oftentimes have this amazing vision coming in and this foresight and how to, really build a project or design a project and create a neighborhood and all these things that are really amazing, raise capital and assemble teams. But the faster that they can assemble a good quality team that's all kind of communicating and working together really helps make projects a big success, especially from these things that we're talking about here, like aligning your marketing, branding, team with if there's a leasing team or a property management leasing team, whatever it might be, aligning those closely very early on is super helpful. Because I think you guys know, maybe you can even speak to this. When we are, from our standpoint as a kind of lease up and management company, when we're, bringing in and having a holistic creation of a go-to-market strategy overall with brand, with marketing, with, all this stuff together, we can operate much more effectively, and it just leads to way, way, way better results.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that kind of goes back to what I was saying before about like a comprehensive but like integrated approach. There's a lot of specialties that are needed nowadays to lease up projects, especially when you're thinking about the digital aspect of, the work that digital marketing does. And so, thinking about it very holistically and kind of bringing everyone to the table to put that plan together, is super helpful at the very beginning of the process.
Yeah. When we think about our most successful projects, I would say those are the projects that were most closely connected to the leasing partner for a property. I would say hands down. And when there is a disjointed relationship between what we're doing and what they're doing from a go-to-market perspective, it always ends up a lot more rocky, I guess, for lack of a better word. But when we're able to kind of fall in sync, fall in line with the leasing team, they get it, we get it, the outcomes are just so much better.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, oftentimes the leasing team, the management team is like much closer to all the residents in the market and understands the sort of the needs, the wants, and to be able to incorporate that in early is super helpful. And then on the flip side of it, from a marketing standpoint process, it's like, again, getting that feedback, like what's working, what isn't working, what messaging is resonating, and being able to iterate and kind of, continue to iterate what we're doing and then amplify from a messaging and marketing standpoint makes so much positive impact to accelerate lease ups that that really just has to happen. If I was to put a fine sort of point on that, I think that's the major factor, that alignment that allows for lease ups to go much faster and more successfully.
Right.
And just having that open line of communication. What's literally going on at the property? How have things been going? What's coming up next? The sort of like insider details that make us do our jobs better, which in turn makes leasing go better. And even with stabilized properties, longer term, ongoing marketing, same thing. getting insight from the ground level goes a really long way.
Yeah. And exactly, and it's like even like getting local on-site content being generated and things that are not just, oftentimes, there's sort of agencies out there, whether they're trying to manage social accounts from afar, and it's just generic and bland and not sort of specific to the project, not specific to the people on site. And it's like, okay, it's fine, it's sort of a presence, but when you can coordinate that and build really cool kind of on-site content and incorporate that on, whether it's just in an email that's going out or whether it's on social or anything else, or even in ads, it can just be a much more powerful tool to accelerate lease up.
Yeah, and beyond, once the project stabilizes, if we've done our job well, the marketing tools that we're using to stabilize the property can also be used once the property is stabilized and to reduce, operating and marketing costs. So that's really important as well, that we're also thinking about when we're kind of putting the strategy together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point to consider. All of this exact same, strategy philosophy applies absolutely to the stabilization period and turnovers and reducing turnovers, helping continue to build the demand that, drives rents higher, but delivers a great resident experience the whole time as well, for sure. All of that same concepts apply on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. And I mean, we've been having, chats about kind of like documenting process essentially. And during the stabilizing and lease up work, that's a lot of what we're doing on the brand side. We're really documenting the way that this brand should really be impacting the leasing experience and the digital marketing work. And then that playbook, I know we've used that term a lot, but that playbook can then be applied to post stabilization marketing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's what I'm really excited about, working with you guys and really kind of creating a more cohesive and aligned strategic, go-to-market strategy. So from start with brand and design and marketing and leasing and stabilization, and it's pretty cool. And I'm pretty fired up to continue the conversation we've been having here to really make that work in a very unique and very powerful way in the multifamily market. So that's what I'm fired up about here on these conversations we've been having. So it's exciting.
It is. And again, just to reiterate, with Authentic going to be able to, when we're at a point where we're going to be able to say leasing is now a part of what we can offer on select projects, it's just going to go such a long way, because as I said, when we don't have that direct line of communication for any leasing services, it just gets a little rocky.
Yeah.
And when we do have that direct link, it just goes really smoothly for everyone. And I think it's just going to make that go-to-market a lot more attractive to a lot of future projects.
Totally, yeah. So what else have we not touched on that you guys think is important for, developers, managers, owners of properties to think about, if anything?
I would love to just plug a couple projects that we've worked on.
Yeah, let's talk. I'd love to dive into that. Thanks for the reminder.
Speaking of data, I have a couple written down here. So there are a couple in Minneapolis. I'm in Colorado. Bryant is in Minnesota, and so we have a lot of great partners out of Minneapolis. But one project called Kenton House, I just want to speak to sort of like this renter nurturing journey and kind of how that all comes to a head when it comes time to actually sign leases. That property, specifically, we had over 300 leads nurtured through that longer pre-leasing life cycle. In the first week, they had 60 calls, 60 people reaching out to them saying, "Are you ready to go? Give me more details. I've been on the list, And by that Friday, they had 10 leases already signed, and it was just a huge, amazing result. I think that was 6 months ahead of time on that one. And then there was another one called the Aubrey, which we're really proud of, another great project in Minneapolis. Through that process, we got feedback from the development partner saying, hey, this went over so well in the neighborhood, we were able to increase rents by 5%. And at the end of kind of like looking at the numbers, after the first year, we were able to add almost $1 million of value to the property itself. And so when we hear results like that, obviously we love it. But being able to put that down on paper and show that to the industry and show that to future partners goes a long way, because it's social proof, but it's also just data. It's ROI. Yeah. It's what developers look at all day long with their pro formas. And we want to be able to sink into that conversation as well and be able to speak their language too.
Yeah, no, those are great examples. I think that's a very good point. Like every if we're achieving over pro forma rents because of an investment in sort of marketing and branding ahead of time, and like you said, 5% increase of rents in this case led to $1 million additional asset value year one, right? Year one, boom, just like that. And that investment, whatever it was in marketing, it's 5, 6, 7x return just for that alone. Never mind, not even counting the early cash flows.
Right.
So it's really, to find a team that can deliver on that concept of excellent marketing that is going to drive actual results. And that I will say that's the other thing, just to give you guys kind of kudos for this. I think you do a great job of thinking about it from a developer standpoint. Again, it's not just about painting a pretty picture. It's about what can we do to differentiate a project and drive results.
Right.
Those results being a great resident experience and great financial results for the developer or owner or whatever it might be. And to actually have a marketing agency who can also think about, or brand and marketing studio that can also think about, like, how do we drive results is such a unique aspect in the industry overall from what we've experienced. So I give you guys kudos for thinking about it that way, for
Thank
sure.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's we're talking about three things here. We're talking about putting together this brand and brand experience. We're talking about the mindset of the developer. We're talking about the mindset of the renter. And if you can kind of put the hat on of each of those and what they need to be and how they communicate to one another throughout this process, then you're pretty far ahead compared to some of the other things that we see in the industry. And we've always had pride in, we can think about it from a business perspective. We can think about it from a renter perspective because, hey, we were renters too. And that's we've had a lot of experience renting. And then, we love design. We love putting together a really great brand experience and web experience.
Yeah, and uniquely with your own custom platform to do it in a most effective way that really actually works. So it's like sort of this holistic approach that just sort of all ties in and works together, and you've got it well thought out and well crafted. So well done. Must be that magic background you have.
I think it was. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, guys, look, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate all the insight and the input. I'm glad you guys were able to make it to Boston to the Charles Gate World headquarters here, and more big things to come with this partnership and exciting work that we're going to be doing together here. So I'm excited to reveal, not to tease the audience too much, but we'll tease them a little bit. More to come.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, guys, thanks so much for the conversation. Awesome.
Sure.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Empowered Returns. If you're a forward-thinking real estate investor or developer looking for actionable advice that will help you generate market-beating returns, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast fix. I'm Mike DeMella with Charles Gate, and I'd love to connect on LinkedIn and further the conversation for any specific questions you may have. Thank you for listening.